Please subscribe. It helps a lot.
I turned 21 somewhere between Baltimore and the edge of Delaware, trying not to let the number mean anything. The gas gauge pinned below a quarter tank, and Eddie was asleep in the passenger seat, mouth slightly open, his hoodie drawn up like he didn't want to be seen by the world. I didn't blame him. I hadn't wanted to be seen in a while either. The closer we came to Lewis, Delaware, the more I stopped looking at the road and started looking at the ocean whenever it slipped into view. Out here, the sky always seemed too wide, like it might swallow you up if you stood still too long. The coastline curved gently, familiar in the way a bruise remembers a fist. We'd been here every summer when we were kids. Our parents didn't want us around, so they'd send us off with duffel bags that never got washed and a $100 bill folded in a note we weren't supposed to open until we landed. I don't think they even called Aunt Lucia after we arrived. She always greeted us like we were her own, even when we weren't sure we deserved it. Now she was gone, and no one told us when. I'd found out through a cousin's Facebook post, buried in the comments, already 6 weeks too late. No funeral invite, no explanation, just gone. We rolled past a weather-beaten sign that read, "Lewis Beach welcomes you," and I turned the radio off. Eddie stirred beside me but didn't wake. The silence felt heavier here, like it pressed into the chest, like the town was holding its breath. The streets hadn't changed much. Same sleepy bungalows with chipped paint, same corner store with the dusty window display of kites and sunscreen. I kept waiting for it to feel like a homecoming, but it didn't. It felt like trespassing. We pulled into the same beach access lot we used to sneak off to when Aunt Lucia thought we were asleep. I parked, shut the engine off, and listened to the tick of the car cooling. The air smelled briny, sharp, with a hint of rot from the marsh. Eddie's eyes blinked open slowly. "Where are we?" he mumbled. "Lewis," I said, "almost at the water." He rubbed his face and sat up straighter. His silence carried too many questions. I reached into the glove box and pulled out a packet of sunflower seeds to hand him. He took them without saying anything, the way people do when hunger becomes routine and small offerings carry too much weight. I stepped out into the salty wind, watching the dunes sway under a pale blue sky. The ocean breathed in long, slow pulls. I used to run barefoot across this sand, chasing seagulls and pretending they were dragons. Aunt Lucia said I saw the world like it owed me something beautiful. I didn't believe her then, and I wasn't sure I believed her now. Still, I thought of her standing on the porch, hands dusted in flour, a seashell between her lips like a flute. She could play music on anything. Bottles, combs, driftwood she'd hollowed out with a knife. But her seashell melodies stayed with me most. I'd been hearing one in my dreams for weeks now. Low and mournful, threaded with something ancient. Each time, the sound led me to the shore, and each time, he was there. I didn't tell Eddie about the dreams. I didn't tell him how they started after we almost got arrested in LA, after they asked for IDs we didn't have, after we ran like people with nowhere left to hide. I kept it all in, because I needed to be the one who had answers, but I didn't. I sat back down on the hood of the car and watched Eddie try to fold himself into sleep again. His face still held the softness of someone not meant for a world like this. He was too trusting, too full of wonder. I remembered the first time I saw the Merman. I was 13. Eddie was 10. He never saw him. Or maybe he did and forgot, like we forget dreams when the day gets too loud. I never forgot. I kept thinking the song would stop once we got here, but it hadn't. It hovered now, like a memory just outside the edge of sound, waiting. I wanted to believe the Merman was calling me for a reason. I wanted to believe we hadn't come here by accident. But belief is dangerous when you're responsible for someone else. The sun dipped low, casting a golden line across the water. My phone buzzed, a calendar notification flashing. Birthday, Enrique Torres. I clicked it away. No messages, no calls, 21, no ID, no home, no future. Only Eddie asleep beside me, and a dream that refused to die. I pressed my heels into the sand, willing it to hold me. For now, it did. I didn't mean to fall asleep with the window open, but the salt air had this way of numbing the parts of me that stayed sharp all day. The car cooled quickly once the sun dipped. Eddie had curled into himself in the back seat with both hoodies, muttering something about needing space. I gave it to him. He hadn't spoken much since our potato chip dinner. He only ate half. I didn't ask why. Somewhere between midnight and the earliest blue of morning, I drifted off. In the dream, I stood waist deep in the ocean, though the water never moved. Stillness hung over everything, thick like honey. The sky had no stars. There was only one sound, the song again. Notes rising and folding into each other, played through something hollow and living. A seashell, I knew before I saw it. Its spiral surface shone in the moonless dark like bone. He stood near the horizon, barely submerged. The same boy from my childhood. He looked older now, maybe my age, if a face like that could be measured in years. Hair longer, shoulders stronger, but the same gaze, the same sound pouring from the shell, cupped in his hands. I wanted to move closer, but my legs wouldn't work. The seafloor kept sucking me down like it remembered me too well. He didn't stop playing. He didn't speak. Still, the sound carried something familiar. Not music. Memory. I woke with the taste of salt in my mouth. My fingers gripped the steering wheel, and I couldn't say why. The beach stretched ahead, soft and untouched. Eddie snored faintly behind me. I stepped out before the panic fully left my chest. The wind scraped cold across my face. There, in the stretch between the car and the water, lay a large seashell, still damp, half buried in sand. Its ridges had been carved with small markings, not random scratches, but symbols, lines that curved and dipped like a musical staff. I turned it in my hand and heard nothing, but the shape of the song pressed itself into my mind like it had always lived there. Whoa! Eddie's voice broke through the silence. You look like shit. He rubbed his eyes and yawned. Did you sleep at all? Yeah, I lied. Weird dreams. He noticed the shell. You collect trash now? I shoved it into the side pocket of my backpack. It's not trash. You're acting real sketchy, man, he said, climbing out of the car. We need gas and food and a plan that isn't camp in the sand until the government forgets we exist. I wanted to tell him everything about the dream, about the boy I saw when we were kids, the one I never told anyone about. But Eddie was already moving toward the car. He needed reality, and I didn't know what mine was anymore. Back in the car, I started the engine again. Enough fuel for maybe 50 miles at most. So we're officially broke, Eddie said. And I don't even know why we're in Delaware. He said it quietly, like he didn't want to start a fight, but the accusation sat between us. I thought you trusted me, I said. He turned to face the window. I trusted you to tell me the truth. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. He didn't need another half answer. Not this time. But the truth felt slippery, like the dream, like the song. How do you explain being drawn somewhere by something no one else believes exists? Outside, the sky brightened with the early sun. It gleamed off the shell inside my bag. I pressed my forehead to the wheel. The merman wasn't supposed to follow me into adulthood. He was supposed to fade with the rest of childhood. But the dreams had returned. The song kept calling. And now, Eddie wanted answers. But I didn't have any I trusted yet. The wind came in sharp from the ocean, pushing the dry sand sideways across the beach in soft hisses. We walked without speaking. I kept my hands in my pockets to hide how badly they shook. Eddie lagged behind, then walked faster to catch up, then slowed again. I could feel it coming. The pressure had built up over too many miles, too many nights of sleeping in the car, too many hours of silence I thought would protect him. He kicked at a piece of driftwood, watched it roll toward the surf, and then turned to face me. "This isn't a road trip, is it?" I stopped walking. "What?" He took a few steps closer. "We didn't come here to clear our heads, or to take some big brother little brother walk down memory lane. You dragged me across the country because something went wrong, and now you don't know how to fix it." The gulls overhead circled once, then vanished inland. "You're not wrong," I said, voice low. "Then tell me why. Why this beach? Why this town? Why now?" I opened my mouth, closed it again. His eyes didn't flinch. He looked older in that moment, more than 18, more than my little brother. He deserved something real. "There's someone I used to see here," I said slowly, "when we were kids." "What, like a friend?" I shook my head. "Not exactly." He frowned. "What then?" I looked toward the water. The horizon had softened in the sun, a pale line between two unknowable blues. I saw him in the water, first when I was 13, always from a distance, always watching. He played music through a seashell, like Aunt Lucia used to. Same sound. It stayed in my head for years. "You're talking about, what, a person? In the ocean?" "Not a person." He laughed once, dry and short. "You're messing with me." "I'm not." "A merman?" His voice raised. "Seriously?" I stepped forward. "You don't have to believe me, but he's been in my dreams for weeks now, playing the same melody. It led me back here." Eddie took a step back, shaking his head. "I'm not losing it," I said. "I'm fine. You expect me to believe we ran from the police, slept in a car, skipped meals, burned through every dollar we had because of a dream? No." I looked down, swallowed. "Because I had nowhere else to go. Because our asshole parents can't or won't give us our birth certificates. Because you're all I've got, and I didn't know how to tell you that we might not have a way out." The air between us stretched tight. Eddie turned away, hands on his head. I almost walked into the ocean to escape the silence. Then I heard it. A melody, soft and familiar, lifted above the waves. Eddie spun. "What the hell is that?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My legs moved before my thoughts caught up. Out in the surf, waist deep, stood the figure. Broad shoulders, long hair slicked back, a seashell pressed to his mouth, fingers covering small holes bored through its sides. The music rang clear, clean, hollow in the salt, thick air. My chest clenched. Eddie stared. "Is that—" I nodded. Are we both seeing him?" "I think so." The merman's gaze met mine. No expression, no invitation, only music. The same song from my dreams, unchanged, echoing across time. Eddie whispered, "I thought you were joking." "I know." He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. I'd never felt smaller than I did standing there beside my brother, watching a dream rise out of the ocean like it belonged more to the world than I ever did. Part of me wanted to run. The rest of me had already stayed too long. The music faded, and the merman slipped beneath the surface without a ripple. Eddie sat down in the sand without a word, and I realized I'd given up every secret I had and still couldn't explain what had brought me here, or what might come next. The water had already gone still again, as if the merman had never been there at all. Eddie kept his eyes locked on the waves for a long time, breathing through his mouth like he hadn't figured out how to put the moment into words. I sat beside him, knees drawn in, arms wrapped around myself. Neither of us said much after that. Later, the tide pulled farther out. The beach widened. I noticed a trail of wet footprints leading away from the water, darker than the rest of the sand. I rose slowly and followed the prints with my eyes. They didn't vanish into nothing. They curved along the shoreline and stretched east, in the direction of the old neighborhood. Aunt Lucia's house stood out there. The air changed. Eddie looked up, then at me. Do you see that? He pointed toward the curve of the beach, where the footprints shimmered in the fading light like they were still fresh. Then, movement just beyond the edge of the dune. A figure, tall, lean, hair dripping onto bare shoulders. He didn't wave, didn't call out, only lifted a hand and turned, walking toward the place we hadn't dared to approach since arriving. The house. My feet moved before I decided to follow. Eddie fell into step behind me without asking anything else. The closer we came to the neighborhood, the more the wind quieted. Familiar fences appeared, some rusted, some painted over. We passed the low cedar gate we once climbed as kids. It had collapsed into the grass. The streetlights hadn't turned on yet. Everything looked dim and held, like the town itself didn't want to wake us from something. When we reached the edge of Aunt Lucia's property, I stopped. The house stood silent, hunched, more weathered than I remembered, but still whole. The front steps had cracked along the sides. Curtains hung inside the windows, yellowed, but unmoving. I couldn't look at the porch without seeing her, always in motion, always humming. Eddie stepped forward, then stopped when I didn't follow. It looks empty. It is, I said, but my voice barely came out. It's not ours anymore. Maybe it is. Before I could respond, the screen door creaked open. A man stepped out. He wore a charcoal suit, tailored sharp, the kind of thing that didn't belong in this town. His shoes didn't crunch the gravel when he stepped off the porch. He adjusted his cufflinks, scanned the beach behind us, then looked right at me. Enrique Torres? He asked. And Eduardo? I froze. My gut twisted fast. My legs tightened, ready to bolt. My brain screamed, go. Run back to the water. Take Eddie and disappear into the sand. We didn't have papers, didn't have the words to explain why we were here. This man in a suit knew our names. That alone felt like a trap. Eddie looked at me, confused. The man took another step. Then something happened. Not out loud, not even like a voice, more like a chord struck deep in my skull. A thought that didn't belong to me. Wait. Listen. Trust him. I knew it came from the Merman. I didn't question it. The man raised both palms. I know you have no reason to talk to me, but I've been waiting days for you. If you give me 5 minutes, I think I can explain why. His tone was calm. Not government calm. Not like the agents back in LA who stood over you while asking for proof of your existence. This calm carried the scent of kindness. Something else lived beneath it. I stepped forward first. Eddie stayed beside me. We didn't cross the property line. Not yet. We weren't trying to trespass, I said. We didn't even know. The man shook his head. You're not trespassing. The house belongs to you. The words didn't land right. I blinked at him. Your aunt left it to you both, he said, his voice softer now. Along with other things. But we can go over everything inside. I looked at Eddie. His eyes were wide, uncertain. I looked toward the water. Nothing stirred, but I felt him. Somewhere, beneath the surface, watching. I exhaled and stepped past the boundary. Not because I trusted the man in the suit, because I trusted the one in the water. The house still smelled faintly like her. Not perfume, not flowers. Something warm, herbal, grounded. Dried citrus and salt. Her scent had clung to the place like it remembered who built it into a home. Eddie walked through the hallway ahead of me, silent. I watched his fingers brush the walls like he was making sure they were real. My body felt heavy, not tired, not exactly. More like I'd been carrying something too long and couldn't quite set it down yet. The man in the suit, led us into the kitchen, and pulled out 3 chairs. He moved like someone trained to appear unthreatening. When he sat, he opened a briefcase, removed a thick envelope, and set it on the table with care. No flair, no build-up. "My name is Gerald Lansing," he said, unclipping a folder. "I'm an estate attorney out of Rehoboth. Your Aunt Lucia hired me 4 years ago." He looked at me, then Eddie. "She wrote a will. A very detailed one." I leaned forward. "We didn't know she was sick." He nodded once. "Yes. It was pancreatic cancer, her second time after beating it 18 months earlier. She declined treatment. Her instructions were very specific. No obituary, no funeral, no social media. She said the people who needed to find their way back would find it without a map." My jaw locked. Our parents knew, didn't they? They did. They came forward, trying to claim her estate, but she was extremely thorough in her last wishes. I looked at the table to keep from breaking something. She knew they would try to interfere. I felt Eddie's hand brush mine. He didn't grab it, didn't squeeze, but the contact anchored me. I'd stopped expecting kindness from family years ago, but Lucia hadn't stopped offering it. Gerald continued, "She left the house to both of you. Fully paid off. No taxes owed for at least 5 years under the homestead preservation grant she enrolled in." He reached into his briefcase again and pulled out a small piece of paper, wrote a number on it, and turned it toward us. When I saw the decimal places, I didn't reach for it. I couldn't move. "There's $3,081,419.37 in total," he said. "Half in cash, the other half invested into dividend-paying index funds." I stared at the table. I didn't believe it. My brain started pulling up every con I'd ever read about. I waited for the ask, the catch, the fine print in invisible ink. But there was none. Gerald reached back into his folder and handed us both envelopes with our names on them. The handwriting was hers. Slanted. Strong. She wrote the same way she spoke, without apology. Eddie opened his right away. I couldn't. I didn't trust my hands to hold it without shaking. "She never stopped loving you," Gerald said. "She told me that often." I tried to speak, but my throat didn't cooperate. Every part of me burned in the quiet. Grief, rage, something like relief, but too raw to name. I didn't know where to put it all. I'd spent years pretending none of this would ever happen, and now it had. I hadn't prepared for grace. Eddie read his letter in full, then folded it back up and wiped his face without shame. "I thought we were going to die out there," he said, voice small. "We didn't," I said. "She didn't let us." The back door faced the ocean. Through the glass, I saw the water stretching wide, lit orange and gold by the setting sun. A figure stood at the edge, half submerged, his face turned toward the house. He didn't move. I walked to the door, pressed my palm against it. Not a wave, not a gesture, just his presence. "You knew," I thought. "I don't know how, but you knew you were bringing us home." I didn't know if he could hear me. Maybe he didn't need to. He turned slightly, enough for the light to catch the edge of his face. Then he stepped backward into the sea, swallowed without a sound. I stood there a long time, until Gerald packed up, until Eddie asked about dinner, until the house felt like ours again. The ocean stayed quiet, and I stayed standing, wondering if love could cross a line like that and still survive. The house took days to feel real. We peeled back sheets from furniture, opened windows that groaned, cleaned with products Aunt Lucia probably bought herself. The walls remembered us better than we remembered them. Eddie found an old Polaroid of us on the porch, barefoot and sticky with watermelon. I looked 12. He looked sunburned and feral. Lucia's handwriting on the back. My wild ones. Safe in the sun. We framed it. Nights came slow. I cooked more than I ever had, just to hear the rhythm of pans and boiling water. Eddie started fixing the back screen door. He never said why. I never asked. One night, after we finished a plate of overcooked pasta, he leaned back in his chair and said, "So, the guy, the one in the water, what's the story?" I thought about lying, softening it, reshaping it into something easier to hold, but I was done with that. I think I've loved him since I was 13. Eddie didn't blink. Cool. That's it? What else would I say? I stared at my fork. He shrugged. Then love him, even if he's in the water. The silence after that wasn't awkward. It felt like the moment a song ends and the last note keeps ringing in the body. Later, I walked the path from the house to the shore barefoot. The sand cooled fast after sundown. The moon stretched thin over the water, long and silver. The kind of night that didn't need words. He was there again, waist deep. Same place as before. I didn't move closer. Neither did he. We didn't wave. We didn't speak. But he smiled. Soft, careful. Like he knew I was still learning how to let myself want something I couldn't name. The shell hung at his side by a thread of seaweed. The waves barely touched him. I pressed my hands into my pockets and looked down. My shadow on the sand trembled slightly with the breeze. I wish you could stay, I said. He tilted his head, as if he'd heard. Maybe he had. Maybe that was enough. I thought about how many things I had spent years running from. Names, questions, places that never felt like mine. People who pretended I was invisible until they needed something. I wasn't running anymore. This house had walls thick with memory. It had food and heat and drawers full of Aunt Lucia's old postcards from places she never visited. It had Eddie, who never stopped believing I knew what I was doing, even when I didn't. It had time, and it had the ocean. Most nights after that, he came back, never closer than the edge of the surf, never farther than I could see. I stopped trying to understand why he didn't speak. I stopped needing answers. Sometimes I sat in the sand with my notebook. Sometimes I didn't write anything at all. One night, I brought the shell from the morning of our arrival. I placed it near the shore, not quite in the water. When I looked up, he was already watching. I nodded once. He nodded back. He never took the shell, but it stayed there, half buried, waiting maybe, or listening. I didn't tell anyone else about him. There wasn't anything to prove. No photo, no witness. Only the sound that still echoed when the wind caught the dunes right. This was the closest we might ever be, and that was enough. I belonged to the shore. He belonged to the tide. And in that small distance between the two, something like love had found a way to breathe.
Please make sure you are subscribed and be one of the strange.